Welcome to the first episode of the brand new Pioneers in Aged Care podcast. The sponsors for this episode is Keen Care. Click the link below to learn more about them. The guest we have on this episode is none other than CEO of Apollo Care Alliance, Stephen Becsi. He really gets me fired up in this conversation. I can't wait to share the episode with you. So without further ado, let's go! Welcome to the Pioneers in Aged Care podcast. Here we have my first guest, Stephen Becsi, CEO of Apollo Care. And today Stephen is going to take us through why he's excited about the industry. And we're really just going to have a conversation about aged care and see what's going on. Okay, could you start off with giving me an overview as to your size, location, services you provide? Just tell me about Apollo Care.
Okay, and thanks Anthony for the invite. I'm very excited to be chin-wagging with you today. Apollo Care is a young organisation. It commenced operations in 2020, July 1, 2020, with our first acquisition in Sydney. So,
where's the 4-year anniversary big shindig going to be?
Well, the 4th has passed. We're coming up to the 5th. 5th in
I'm still a year behind.
In July. Haven't thought about that yet. We're probably too busy, growing still right now. But we received our approved provider's license back in 2017 on an idea of trying to do something different. Mm-hmm. And now we're 12 residential aged care facilities in size, a number of retirement villages, childcare, medical centre and home care. So it's been good growth, getting to a level that is now sustainable, and we're operating in 3 states, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland.
Fantastic. So how many employees do you think altogether?
A tad over 1,400.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And I remember this, because when I first called you, I didn't really understand what this Apollo Care Alliance was, because I was searching Apollo Care facilities. There was no Apollo Care facility. And then you told me a story about why you did it that way, why you kept it all individual. There was a resident, I forgot his name, but can you tell that story?
Look, for us, when the idea was first conceived, it was our chairman, John Young, that came up with the idea. John's an expert in deregulation, and I met him back in 2013, and I just left Bethany in Western Australia as the CEO, and spoke with him about aged care and mentioned that at some stage in the future aged care will probably deregulate. And that caught his attention, so he went away and researched aged care and came back and said, "You're right, Stephen, there is no way the government is going to be able to pay for aged care at some point in the future. There's just going to be too many people. So the system's going to have to go through some structural change. And what we'll do is we'll try and work out how we can, with the understanding of what happens in a deregulated market, work out how we could basically provide services in areas of need, and that was regional. And if you do understand the regions, very passionate, very parochial about their own aged care in their own towns. And so we went about trying to work out how you could maintain the legacy and identity of individual aged care organisations in regional Australia, but come under the umbrella of a larger organisation that could cover all the issues around regulation, around governance, around financials, etc., where the smaller providers might not survive.
Yep.
And so that was the beginning of it. That was the genesis of it. And we then spent 6 or so years working with the department, the Charities Commission, Tax Office, everyone, to work out how we could create a an organisation that would be able to acquire smaller providers but keep those smaller providers operating in their own right. So a deliberate decision not to promote Apollo Care, but to promote and brand the individual organisations that still remained in place.
Yeah. And can you give an example as to why that benefits a resident? What impact does it have on them?
Well, what we're doing is we're managing at the local level. So effectively our RSMs, our site managers, are the CEOs, and therefore you've got decisions being made at that level rather than some head office, in Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne, or which could be thousands of kilometres away from the town.
Yes.
So we have governance structures where we have locals on the board, and it is still about the resident in that town and the surrounding areas being cared for, because it has got that local input at the decision-making levels, etc.
Because I'd imagine when you have decisions being centralised thousands of kilometres away, all the little things that make that facility unique to the resident, whatever unique requests they make may be shut down and cut off because of compliance, and head offices are too hard for us to manage everywhere. But if that decision is being made in the facility, they can sort of cater to those requests, it seems like.
Spot on. And that's the big difference. I mean, I was a CEO of a very large organisation in aged care, and decisions are made at the head office level, completely separate to where the operations are running, and rightly so. But having a head office not only increases that level of bureaucracy and slows down the decision-making process, there are other things that you've got to take into account. I mean, if you've got a big, nice building in a city somewhere, that costs money, and that has to be spread across, all of your sites. Having a large number of people inside a head office, there's a fixed cost associated with all the people that has to be spread. Coming up with a system where we're in the cloud, there is no head office. The decision makers are primarily the site managers. They make the decisions. They've got levels of accountability that allow them to make those decisions. And when they need assistance, they can basically, in the cloud, go to the subject matter experts to give them the advice. So shared services all being in the cloud, there is no head office. The speed at which you can make decisions, and make decisions that are in the interest of the locals in a town, are there.
So scalability and agility, would you say, is unmatched? Is there anyone else doing something similar, or is there anyone else you think they could?
I don't know whether or not anyone else is operating completely in the cloud like we are, but there are moves that way. So certainly scalability and agility, we have that. And I think over time you're going to find more and more of that coming into being. But the other advantage might also be the fact that we started in 2020, in COVID. We were forced to run the organisation in the cloud, and we have no legacy. Therefore, everything we've started that was cloud-based, so there is no legacy. So I don't have, for example, the constraints of trying to look after our data inside some legacy system, so spending a lot of resources on cyber, for example. We actually had that built into our architecture right from day one. So no legacy systems. Everything is current. Everything is in the cloud. We're not spending an inordinate amount on cyber like others, because we actually have it in the architecture to begin with. So agility and scalability is extremely important, and we're still scaling. We're still wanting to grow. We're at about 1,000 beds now, slightly more soon, I hope. And the more beds you have, those costs can be spread, And once again, then therefore it brings the cost down, which makes it even more viable.
And I guess, well, one of the benefits of having everyone under one brand would be the, I guess, cross-pollination of best practices, sharing of resources. In Apolicare, you're individual, but is there much teamwork, collaboration going on?
Wow, that's actually a really good question. Last week, I had 2 workforce committee meetings. So for me, I like the workforce really involved and engaged in the business as a whole. So if you're an individual provider in a town, you have no benchmark other than the national benchmarks by which you can compare yourself. We have currently 12 facilities. So I have 12 facilities worth of data and information that I look at. And we're basically running our organisation on 11 KPIs across a balanced scorecard. So a balanced scorecard, running an organisation, you're looking at your customer, you're looking at your systems and processes, you're looking at your staff, and you're looking at financials. That's a balanced view of the world. And we have 11 KPIs that sit under those 4 lenses, and that's how we basically judge whether or not a site has come up to speed or not. And I am a full supporter that staff should be able to see how a business is running. So at our site workforce performance committee meetings, our site managers will actually show the workforce committee, which is the staff, from the galley and from, laundry and from, the floor. So you've got your carers and you've got your admin, everyone looking at this, representatives. And the site manager shows the performance of the 11 KPIs, that site, and then we show the staff that site relative to all the other sites in the group. So you get a real understanding of how you're going in all of the areas, and staff love it. And at the end of the day, it's the staff that improve the KPIs. It's not someone sitting in a head office thousands of kilometres away. The only way the business gets done, be it the care for the resident, or be it having the correct systems and processes and using them, or your staff's culture, or even the financials, is if the staff are committed and they drive it. It's not people in the head office. We've just got to provide the information, and so we do.
And I remember attending one of your presentations where you discussed how the mini CEOs, they were willing to give an RN to another facility just to reduce agency costs, even though it would increase their agency costs, but the positive impact to them outweighed the negative impact to their personal facility. But they get nothing for it, but this cross-collaboration.
Yeah.
How did you build that culture?
Building culture. Once again, you've just heard an example of it. We have a workforce performance steering committee that reports up to a corporate workforce performance steering committee. So we have the staff engaged right from the get-go. And we manage behaviours, and we use a SaaS system to manage behaviours. So we're promoting under the balanced scorecard lens. We have, for customer, it's put residents first. For systems and processes, it's quality and safety in everything we do. For staff, it's work together, achieve together. For financial, it's use resources wisely. And we are encouraging our staff to actually engage with those behaviours and demonstrate those behaviours and showcase those behaviours. There's a real science, it's psychology, to move a workforce from a state of called helplessness to hopefulness. Now, if you go and do the research, you'll find that this is real. It is psychology, and basically we've got a psychologist in the pocket for every single staff member, using technology.
Can you tell me about, is that Apollon? Or what?
Apollon is the organisation that has developed this SaaS-based technology that is around the psychology of behaviours. So, every staff member is given access to this system, and not only does it allow for the demonstration of those behaviours, there's a lot of other clever things in there around well-being, etc. And therefore, if you're getting that culture, which you can score, because you can score culture based on whether or not they are demonstrating or not demonstrating those behaviours, you can get a hard score. You can actually track the well-being of all your staff as well. So we have well-being scores. We have a whole bunch of things. So once again, it's part of that technology. So we're very fortunate. We're able to raise capital because Apollo Care itself is a private company, but the individual PBIs, the not-for-profits that were in the town, they're the operating companies. They've basically outsourced the approved provider, soon to be registered provider status, to Apollo Care. So we're the ones that put those systems and de-risk the operating companies. So we're able to raise the capital, and we've raised the capital not to survive. We raise capital to acquire struggling, until the last two acquisitions anyway, struggling providers in the bush, and we then use it to put the love back into the buildings. We do a lot of refurbishment and extensions, and we use it on IT. And as I said, the IT is expensive, but because we don't have a head office, we can actually afford the additional expenses.
Now, how do you get staff to participate in, because these metrics where they are, they're doing well and they're enjoying working at Apollo Care? How are you getting them to engage in the app and participating?
Oh, gee, probably better to get a psychologist to actually answer how you do it. But it's quite easy. If you have systems in place that do improve the well-being, because what you're doing is you're not focusing on the negatives, you're actually focusing on what you're achieving. And for well-being, achievement and connection are the two ingredients you need to improve well-being. So if we're showcasing and demonstrating all the time the achievements that are being made in the facilities across those four lenses, and you're getting connection. So you're getting staff talking with each other. They're actually using the apps. They're finding out positive ways of dealing with stress and things like that. It feeds upon itself. And once you get to 50% engagement, it then
it's got momentum.
Skyrockets. Yeah. The momentum is there. And I mean, gee, last month, and I track our engagement and consumption, and we've got an engagement and consumption data across the group, of about 78, 79% right now. And we have some sites, we've actually had a site in Queensland to hit 100%, where all staff are consuming all of the information and their well-being's right up. So once you get that, you're on the road to recovery, and you're on the road to having a wonderful facility with the appropriate care being provided to residents.
When you say showcase, this is part of the app where they can perhaps take a picture of a colleague and say, this is what this person did for me, or is that...
Exactly. So what we do for showcasing is it's great to be able to showcase good things that are going on at site level, and we have staff doing that. And there's that level, and then there's this higher level. Okay, you've showcased something that's happened, an event that's happened at site. Can you relate it back to the behaviours and what it meant by showcasing in terms of, some improvement at site? And currently, the numbers are astronomical. We're getting about 400 showcases a month across the group. The level of engagement is so high. I mean, you hear in HR circles, if you put out a survey and you get, 30% you've done well. as I said, we're getting engagement where we're hitting anywhere from high 70s to 100%. We've got the staff and the site managers driving the business.
Are you still? There was a point where you were responding to each individual showcase, and I thought there's got to be a point where you're just going to be. It's going to take up so much time. Did you manage to catch up?
If I don't go onto the site and look at all the showcasing, within a week I could be 100 showcases behind, but I still track every showcase. And technology is very clever now, so I can, like on Facebook, you can do your likes, if you love hearts, you can do comments. And
you don't have to write a whole thing.
You don't need
the
to.
fact that they see that you've liked it, and they'll feel proud that their CEO is still there with them in the trenches and watching and trying to learn what they're doing.
And you do learn. And I mean, once again, because the technology is there, if I do write a comment, every single person that was tagged in that showcase, staff members, get my response. So you actually can get conversations. I have a fairly good idea about what is going on at every site. And don't get me wrong, it takes up a fair bit of my time. What does the CEO of a group that's in the cloud, running sites in multiple states, where do you spend your time? Well, a lot of it is in that culture space. A huge amount is at workforce committees and online, checking on showcases and things like that. There's a heck of a lot around governance, because not only are you accountable to the department and the commission, you're also accountable to the Charities Commission, because there are currently 9 PBIs which are in the Alliance. You're accountable as the public officer to the tax office. So there's a lot of accountabilities out there. So you're spending time in marketing, governance, and culture. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time right now.
Well, I'm not surprised that you're getting these 70 to 80% upwards engagement. If you're replying to them and you're interacting, and if they know that is going to be seen, and if they feel like, if you've built that culture where everyone wants to showcase and highlight each other's contributions.
Look, and the proof is in the pudding. When we first started, we picked up a number of sites that were in sanction. So, the morale was low, everything was down, and you come in and you try and save it. And then the next wave of sites that joined the Alliance were struggling from a financial perspective. So, you had issues around solvency, so not necessarily in sanction, but you had significant financial risk. Then there was this third wave around governance. Let's be frank, with the change of the Act, the increase compliance requirements now, the additional responsibilities on directors, governance is now a major player in whether or not you're going to remain in aged care or not. And there are a lot of standalone providers, especially in the regions, that would find it really difficult to stay on top of all the compliance regime that is now put in place. So, boards are thinking about, is it time to, change direction, to get out of the sector, which they won't. In the towns you won't. You need aged care could be the largest employer. And everyone doesn't, residents don't want to go to other towns or hundreds of kilometres away. They want to stay in their own town. So having a hard decision to stay in aged care but sell out, how do you do that? So for us, maintaining the operating companies and the legacy and identity is attractive to some organisations.
I don't know what the number of standalone facilities there are in Australia, but I'm thinking if there is a standalone facility out there that is struggling financially with compliance issues, sanctions, I see no drawback of reaching out to you and getting under the Alliance.
No, I don't see any drawback either. I mean, you come into a larger family, where you're beginning to share that information. You can get resources from the other sites. You've mentioned it before, some site managers offering up RNs to other site managers that are in trouble. And remember, in the bush, it's a little bit harder than, in the city.
They still keep the decision making at the local level. They still keep the individuality and uniqueness that makes the facility unique. So
there are a lot of wins in coming into an alliance like ours, as compared to maybe selling out to a large organisation that the decisions are made higher up. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. All right, Stephen. So this next portion of the podcast, we're going to talk about what we can do as an industry to innovate or push each other and challenge each other to do better. There was an advert I wrote, and it was called "Bringing Sexy Back to Aged Care."
Saw that.
And it was very tongue-in-cheek. It was nothing to do with gender or anything. But I wrote that because I came back from the aged care conference, and every second person I spoke to said aged care isn't sexy. And to me, sexy is in the eye of the beholder. To me, aged care is very beautiful, attractive, whatever word you want to use it. I just think we need to reframe it and get more eyes on us, because there's a lot happening. Even from what you're doing, everyone is doing something in pioneering and innovating, but there's just not enough noise about it. There's a lot of negative noise, but I want to ask you what you've seen out there. What do you think you want to see more of, or what have you seen in your career that you thought this is going to bring sexy back to aged care? This is going to be pretty cool for us.
It's a tough question because of that negative mindset. We've had the media for years, howling down aged care, and rightly so. And we've had compliance brought in because of the lowest common denominator, and we've had staff that haven't been appropriately paid, which of course Fair Work Commission has now resolved. So there has been a lot of negative about aged care and no positive. It's stand back. When people speak to me about aged care, I go, okay, the country is ageing. We all know that. There's this huge wall of oldies coming through the system. What is out there? We've got the federal government, and rightly so, funding home care. People do want to stay in their homes. There is no doubt about it. And if they could stay in their homes right through to the end of life, a great solution. We have hospitals. Now, hospitals exist for a reason. They're there to fix people up. So it's all about clinical. Nursing homes, and I'll use the term nursing home, and I'm deliberately using the term nursing home rather than aged care facility or residential aged care facility. I'll use the old term, nursing home, 2 words, nursing and home. It's not a hospital, and it's not your home, but it's meant to be a home. And it's meant to have an appropriate level of care in that home that makes you comfortable towards the very end of life, for the frail and aged. It's a great industry. It is a great service to this country, and it has been not supported from a financial perspective or from the media perspective of being a great sector. The government is improving that. Not only has it poured more funds in now, it's changing the system where there will be co-contributions, which means there will be even more funding coming into a sector that needs to grow to be able to provide the service to those that can't receive the care in their own home. Nothing worse than, I think, being at home and having a categorisation that's going to give you X amount of hours of care a day, And if you don't have family coming over because all the families are busy working and looking after their own kids, you're a very lonely person. And that's not good and that's not fair. So at some point, or if you're so frail or have comorbidity issues where you do need constant supervision and care, nursing homes are the right solution. And as the population ages, the requirement for more beds increases. Look at it from a pure financial perspective. You put a person into a hospital, and I will go the full dimensions. Hospitals, you can have regional hospitals and you can have metro hospitals. You can have public hospitals and you can have private hospitals. So if you go and Google and say, what is the cost to have someone in a bed in a hospital in Australia? The range is anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 a day. That's to cover the building costs, your capital, your nurses, your care workers, your cleaners, your food, your doctors, your specialists, your drugs. It's very expensive. Nursing homes, so homes where it's home-like, where you're providing care, $300 a day. If you're receiving, funding from the government for care, the ANAC, $300 a day, a lot cheaper. So to have nursing homes and plenty of beds in place so that you're not having people that are aged in hospitals is absolutely a smart thing to do. So when you start talking numbers like that, people engage.
I've never heard those. That's the first time I've had anyone has ever framed it in that way. Like, and especially the term nursing home versus aged care facility. That is so important to bring it back to nursing homes.
It's a nursing home. So yes, we have accreditation, and yes, it's focused on the nursing bit, and a little bit of extra now with lifestyle and the back office stuff that you need to be able to provide to make certain that they've got the residents are the highest quality and safety. You need that, but it is still their home, and it's a solution for the government. There should be growth in aged care. It should be significant growth. It should be taking the burden off hospitals and focusing more. So I actually think aged care is probably out of primary health and acute. Aged care has got a really bright future. It's a booming industry. We're attracting the right people. We're getting professionals in. We need the media to change its focus to now all the positive stories that are going on. It's a really sexy business.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Sexy business. All right. So I've got a question here from our sponsor. So our sponsor today is Keen Care, and the parent company is Telelink. The question is posed by the CEO, Arav Kumar, and his question is, as we all recognize, progress notes are essential for tracking a client's progress in aged care or home care. Given that our carers come from diverse backgrounds, which can sometimes complicate documentation, what innovative solutions or strategies do you believe could help our staff write more effective and comprehensive progress notes?
Good question. Really good question. Okay, I've got one line that is a professional line around progress notes. So I will read, and I will only read once, but in relation to progress notes, we assess, plan, deliver and evaluate resident care, aiming to enable residents to live their best life. So that's it for notes. You need to be able to do all that. So in order to, track, record, analyse the data to come up with information that best takes care of the care needs for residents, you need systems in place to do it. And our staff in aged care, generally, you haven't got, medically trained staff that have gone through, the TAFEs and universities. So you've got staff there that are doing the very best care, and in some cases, or in a lot of cases, English might not be the first language. So there would be hesitancy if you're having to type and write notes all the time. We do need the notes, and you need exception reporting. That's how, you know, your registered nurses are able to understand better what is going on with the resident. So to answer the question going forward, not with what's going on right now, what do you need? We have everything in the cloud right now. We have systems in place that captures the data. We have that. But we do not have a system that actually can capture staff talking rather than spending time typing in notes or pressing icons on your software explaining what's going on. Wouldn't it be good if you had staff talking while they're with the resident about whatever's going on, capturing that information, converting it to data that is able to be analysed, and I'm going to say it, by AI, and therefore begin to predict and suggest what is going on with the resident and what possibly you could do to improve it. That's the next step. Have we got the basics in place now for that? Yes, we do. Yeah. There are organisations that are investing heavily in IT, they're investing in systems, and they're now able to, I think, integrate that next level where you've got AI and they're beginning to predict. I don't think it's something that should be ignored. And I think that the efficiencies and return on investments are there. The improvements in care will be there. The assistance for RNs when they're making these hard decisions will be there.
Well, I've got an episode coming out in the near future. I think you'd be interested in that. Sort of addresses what you just said, but I'll keep that under the hat for now.
Excellent.
Okay. Right. So we are going into your story. Okay, Stephen, this next section is about you because I love learning about aged care and what's happening in the industry, but I think part of what draws people into the industry is the personal connection. And people want to work with people they believe in and have their backs. And what better way to sort of showcase who you are is than to dig into your career, how you got into aged care. I'm just going to quickly read out from your LinkedIn. Where are you?
Well, that can be dangerous.
Nothing controversial here. Okay. So just quickly, Chairman of the Board, Western Port Community Limited, Chairman of the Board, Tenterfield Care Centre, Chairman of the Board, Bundelier Care Operations, Chairman of the Board, Charingfield Aged Care Community, CEO, Director and Co-founder, Apollo Care. That's from December 2019 to present. Previous to that, CEO of Apollon. That's February 2014 to 2019, and you still hold that relationship with them. CEO of Bethany Group from 2000 to February 2014. You were there for 14 years. Amazing. And prior to that, Director Strategic Reform Program, Royal Australian Navy, and also Captain Royal Australian Navy. That's some career.
It's been an interesting career. Been very blessed.
What blows me away and makes me go, how did you go from the Navy? Well, how did you go from the Navy to
aged care?
Aged care.
Yeah. Okay.
How did that happen?
Loved the Navy. I joined the Navy in 1979 as a cadet midshipman and retired as a commander, as the Deputy Director of Sustainability in the Naval Headquarters. A great 20 years. The reason I left, I'd been recommended for promotion to captain and was going to do another tour in the Gulf on board HMAS Anzac. And my third child had just been born, so I came home, said to my partner, Two bits of news, Libby. Just been promoted to a captain, and I'm going to go back to sea, back to the Gulf for a tour. And the response was, think hard about that one, Stephen. I'm going to be at home on my own with 3 children under the age of 5. Maybe you should rethink. And I rethought. And at that time, my brother, who happened to be a pastor in Churches of Christ, had phoned up and said, Stephen, if ever you're thinking about getting out of the Navy, a job's come up with Churches of Christ Homes and Community Services in Western Australia as the CFO, Deputy CEO. Why don't you think about that? So went for an interview, and I was then in aged care. So I didn't think about it, it just happened. But that was 2000, and aged care had just gone through a major reform. Accreditation had just started. We'd had Salvation Army on the East Coast get out of the game. It was a game changer, and Churches of Christ Homes and Community Services decided it wanted to grow. It wanted to take on the challenge. So with my background in logistics in the military, I did a postgrad in logistics management, which back then in 2000 was project management at greater than about $10 billion. So I was, the business manager for the Anzac ship project. And I learnt everything about growing businesses. So I learnt the 10 integrated elements of integrated logistics support. So how do you grow a business looking at the 10 different things? There's a real engineering science behind it. So at the interview, I said, if you want to grow, building nursing homes is exactly the same as building warships. And I explained it and got the job.
And then my tagline for this episode.
There we go. So what did we do with an organisation that then had, half a dozen retirement villages and a bunch of old nursing homes? We had to reinvigorate. So got the Navy to actually build a predictive model for me, which with the data back then in 2000 came up with the perfect size nursing home from a viability perspective. And back then it was 162 beds. So I had to convince the department, the federal government, to give us a bunch of beds. And they gave us 550 beds, and then had to convince the banks to give us a loan to build 3 162-bed aged care facilities and 3 retirement villages with 162 houses on each village. So all up, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the Adelaide Bank came through without much of a balance sheet. You couldn't get away with it now, and gave us a facility of $100 million to kick it all off. And we did it based on the predictive modelling. It worked, and it worked like a dream. So that was my introduction to aged care. It was about massive construction, development, and bringing into service hundreds of beds in Western Australia in a very short time.
Where's that facility? Where's that?
Well, we had them down in Eton, near Bunbury, Port Kennedy, Rockingham, up in Yanchep, so all around Perth and south of Perth.
So was this before the renaming?
Yes, and then after that it became Bethany. That was part of the rebranding. So
wow.
It was a great journey.
Wow.
Terrific journey.
Which one was the first facility?
The first one that came online would have been Bethany Waters in Port Kennedy. That came on in about 2004, I think. And the retirement village there actually won Retirement Village of the Year in 2007. So my mum lives in there now. So it was a good one. But yeah,
that's amazing.
There was a lot of growth, and it was terrific. Go forward a couple of decades to Apollo Care. Apollo Care is something completely different. Once again, innovation. Yeah, we're in the cloud. We don't have a head office. We raise capital for the purposes of spending on refurbishment and IT to save facilities in regional Australia that would close down, and we're bringing them back to life. So it is just as exciting. The growth is good, but there's still so much more we can do.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good bit of history there.
Yeah.
So, okay, so final question, just to learn a bit about yourself. Is there anything that you'd like to share so that when someone sees you, maybe they can connect with you in a certain way? Because I think a lot of people see someone who's got a CEO job title as I don't want to bother them, I've got nothing to talk to them about. Anything you want to share about your personal life, or maybe there's a topic of conversation where your friends would say, don't get Stephen started on that, he won't shut up about it.
Yeah.
What would you like to share with the audience?
It's personal, and without going into too much depth, as a CEO of an organisation that is doing good and saving facilities, meeting with the residents, and for me, my passion is staff. If your staff are fired up, your business will work. If they know what's going on, they will help drive where you need to run. I'd say that the thing that was lacking with me, I had a concept of what families went through when making hard decisions about aged care. I mean, everyone has the concept, you know, your parents get to a certain age and they may very well need home care, or they may very well need residential aged care.
Yeah.
But it's still a concept until it happens, and then you go through the system with your parents or whatever in the process of getting those services put in place. My wife had cancer in 2021, and part of the chemo and radio, it brought early onset dementia on. So for me, living at home with someone that actually does need the service of care makes it very real now, because I have that at home, and I'm going through the issue of now how do you provide that care. Got a daughter that's come back home to provide that care. Gives you greater empathy. So I know what it feels like now to put someone through the process of getting care. All the road bumps, all the blockages, you have an idea of it because you're actually going through it. So that, I think, helps rounding you out as a CEO, because you're actually
you're living both ends.
Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You always get me fired up.
Appreciate it, Anthony. Love to speak with you anytime.
Always.
Terrific.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.